Ta Wu sighed as he adjusted his microscope, peering at yet another alien microbe sample. The sterile lab of Outpost Horizon felt particularly empty today. Most of his human colleagues had returned to Earth for the annual rotation, leaving him alone with his research and the constant hum of life support systems. "Working late again, Professor Park," came a melodious voice from the doorway. Ta Wu looked up to see Callan, his Andromedan friend. The tall, blue-skinned merchant stood with his characteristic posture, slightly tilted to the right, a sign of respect in Andromedan culture. "Just finishing up," Ta Wu said, smiling at the familiar face. "I didn't expect to see you back so soon. Thought you'd be halfway to the Polaris system by now." Callan moved into the lab, his movements fluid despite his massive frame. Business concluded earlier than anticipated. The spice traders were eager to deal. Their friendship had begun 3 years ago, when Callan's ship docked at Outpost Horizon with engine troubles. Ta Wu, curious about alien biology, had asked endless questions about Andromedan physiology. Instead of taking offense, Callan had been amused by the human scientific interest. What started as academic curiosity had grown into genuine friendship. "You must join me for dinner," Callan said. "I've brought those earth fruits you enjoy." "Apples, yes. Red ones." Later that evening in Callan's private quarters aboard his ship, the two sat across from each other. The room was decorated with artifacts from dozens of worlds, a reflection of Callan's extensive travels and successful trading career. "How is your research progressing?" Callan asked, carefully cutting an apple with his 3-fingered hand. Ta Wu shrugged. "Slowly. Earth doesn't prioritize pure research anymore. It's all about commercial applications now. A shame. Your species has such potential for understanding others." Callan paused, seeming to consider something. "My people value knowledge differently. We believe understanding is itself a form of wealth." They talked for hours, as they often did. Callan shared stories of distant star systems, while Ta Wu explained human concepts like music and poetry. The Andromedan was particularly fascinated by haiku, the compact poetry that conveyed so much with so little. Weeks passed with Callan remaining at the station, unusual for the normally restless merchant. Ta Wu noticed his friend seemed tired more often, his blue skin taking on a grayish tint. "Are you feeling well?" Ta Wu finally asked one day. Callan's 4 eyes blinked slowly. "Observant as always, my friend." "No, I am not well." The diagnosis came soon after: crystal lung syndrome, a disease that turned Andromedan respiratory tissue into brittle crystal formations. It was rare, painful, and always fatal. There must be treatments. Ta Wu insisted, searching medical databases day and night. "None effective," Callan said simply. "But do not grieve yet. I have months still." Those months became a time of deeper connection. Ta Wu visited Callan daily as the merchant's strength declined. He learned Andromedan comfort songs and performed them, his human voice struggling with the alien tones. "You sing terribly," Callan joked one evening, "but with great heart." Ta Wu laughed. "Music is universal, even if talent isn't." As Callan grew weaker, he began speaking more about Andromedan customs and beliefs, especially regarding death and inheritance. "My people pass wealth to those who truly understand us," Callan explained. "Not always family. Sometimes friends. Sometimes even strangers who see us clearly." Ta Wu nodded, thinking it was just conversation to distract from pain. One morning, Ta Wu entered Callan's quarters to find 2 Andromedan females present. Both were tall and elegant, with the same blue skin as Callan but with more delicate features. They regarded Ta Wu with what he recognized as Andromedan curiosity. Head tilted, lower eyes narrowed. "Ta Wu," Callan said weakly from his bed. "Meet Nari and Minna, my bondmates." Ta Wu bowed in the Andromedan way. He had heard Callan mention his wives, but had never met them before. "Your friendship has brought Callan great joy," said the taller one, Nari. Her voice was musical but reserved. "Mina, The shorter one, with iridescent markings on her face, simply nodded. 3 days later, Kalon's condition worsened dramatically. Taiwu sat beside his bed through the night, Nari and Mina on the other side. Together, they sang comfort songs as Kalon's breathing grew labored. Taiwu, Kalon whispered during a moment of clarity, "I have made my decision. You will understand when the time comes." By morning, Kalon was gone. Grief hit Taiwu hard. He had lost friends before, but never someone from another world, another culture. The loss felt different somehow, more profound in its alienness. 1 week after the funeral ceremony, Taiwu received an official communication. The message requested his presence at an Andromedan legal proceeding. Confused but respectful of their customs, he agreed. The proceeding took place in a small chamber aboard a visiting Andromedan diplomatic vessel. 5 elderly Andromedans in formal attire sat behind a curved table. Nari and Mina were present, standing quietly to one side. Taiwu Park of Earth, began the central elder. We are here to execute the final wishes of Kalon Vos of the merchant house Zenith. Taiwu nodded, unsure what to expect. It is unusual, the elder continued, but Kalon Vos has named you, a human, as his primary inheritor. Taiwu blinked in confusion. I don't understand. The elder activated a holographic display showing vast holdings, ships, trading routes, property on multiple worlds, and financial accounts with numbers that made Taiwu's eyes widen. All this passes to you, as does guardianship of his bondmates, Nari and Mina, if they choose to accept the arrangement. Taiwu looked at the 2 Andromedan females, who seemed just as surprised as he was. This cannot be right, Taiwu said. Surely his family. In our culture, interrupted another elder, wealth flows to those who truly understand us. Kalon believed you understood him better than anyone, even his own kind. Nari stepped forward. Kalon spoke often of your conversations, your questions, your desire to understand rather than judge. He made this decision with clear mind, added Mina softly. We were witnesses. Taiwu stood speechless. He was now one of the wealthiest beings in this sector of space, guardian to 2 Andromedan females, and at the center of what would surely become an interstellar incident. There will be challenges, warned the central elder. Many will question a human holding Andromedan wealth and position. Taiwu thought of Kalon's words. Understanding is itself a form of wealth. I accept, Taiwu said finally, to honor Kalon's memory and his vision for cooperation between our peoples. As he spoke, he noticed Nari and Mina exchange glances. Their expressions were unreadable to him, a reminder of how much he still had to learn about their culture. What none of them realized was that Kalon's unexpected decision would change the course of human-Andromedan relations forever. News of Taiwu's inheritance spread quickly through the galactic community. Within days, the human xenobiologist found himself at the center of a political storm. Andromedan news networks broadcast heated debates about the propriety of a human holding such significant Andromedan assets. This is an outrage. The voice of Dorax, head of the Merchant Guild, boomed through the communication screen in Taiwu's new quarters. The quarters were aboard Kalon's flagship, the Star Whisper, a vessel bigger than the entire research wing of Outpost Horizon. A human cannot possibly manage Andromedan holdings or understand our bondmate traditions. Taiwu watched the broadcast with a growing sense of unease. Behind him, Nari and Mina stood silently, their expressions unreadable to his human eyes. We must challenge this inheritance immediately, Dorax continued, addressing the Andromedan High Council. I request an emergency hearing. The council agreed. 3 days later, Taiwu found himself traveling to Andromeda Prime, the heart of Andromedan governance. The Star Whisper moved smoothly through hyperspace, its crew treating him with a mixture of curiosity and caution. They don't know what to make of you, Nari explained as she showed him to the bridge. Her voice was cool and analytical. No human has ever inherited an Andromedan trading house before. What do you and Mina think of this situation? Taiwu asked. The question had been weighing on him. Nari's 4 eyes blinked in sequence, a sign of consideration among her people. We are adjusting. Kaelan's decision surprised us as well. But you don't object. Kaelan was wise in business and in personal matters, she replied carefully. We trust his judgment, even when we don't fully understand it. Later that evening, Ta Wu found Mina in the ship's garden, tending to plants from dozens of worlds. Unlike Nari's businesslike demeanor, Mina moved with a quiet grace that reminded Ta Wu of a dancer. These flowers are from Earth, Ta Wu said, recognizing a cluster of lavender. Mina nodded. Kaelan brought them back from his last visit to your world. He said their scent reminded him of your friendship. Simple but persistent. Ta Wu felt a lump in his throat. I miss him. As do we, Mina said softly. He spoke of you often, said you asked questions no other human did. About our souls, our art, not just our technology or resources. Their conversation was interrupted by the ship's arrival at Andromeda Prime. The planet's surface glittered with cities that seemed to flow like liquid rather than stand rigid like human architecture. The hearing was scheduled for the next day. That night, unable to sleep, Ta Wu studied Andromedan customs and laws on his datapad. The legal system was complex, based on principles of harmony and balance, rather than the precedent-based approach of Earth law. You should rest, came Mary's voice. She stood in the doorway of his quarters. I need to be prepared, Ta Wu replied. There is something you should know. Nari entered and sat across from him. Dorax and Kaelan were rivals for many years. This challenge is not merely about you being human. It's about Dorax gaining control of Kaelan's trading routes. Ta Wu nodded slowly. Politics is the same everywhere, it seems. The next morning, Ta Wu entered the council chamber with Nari and Mina flanking him. The room was circular, with 7 senior council members seated on an elevated platform. Below them sat representatives from major Andromedan houses, including a smug-looking Dorax. This gathering will address the inheritance claim of the human Ta Wu Park, announced the chief counselor, an elderly Andromedan with silver-blue skin. Merchant Guild leader Dorax has challenged the validity of this inheritance. Dorax rose to speak. Esteemed council, this human may have been Kaelan's friend, but friendship does not qualify him to manage a trading empire. More importantly, the guardianship of bondmates is sacred in our culture. How can a human who doesn't even understand our bonding practices properly care for Nari and Mina? Murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber. Furthermore, Dorax continued, allowing human control of major trading routes poses a security risk to all Andromedans. The chief counselor turned to Ta Wu. Do you wish to respond? Ta Wu stood, feeling the weight of alien eyes upon him. Respected council, I did not seek this inheritance. Kaelan chose me, and I accepted out of respect for his wishes. But do you understand our ways? Challenged a female counselor. Prove your knowledge of Andromedan culture. Ta Wu took a deep breath. In Andromedan tradition, wealth is not merely material, it represents connections, understanding, and harmony. When Kaelan taught me the ritual of holdings, he explained that assets flow to those who truly understand the holder's spirit. The chamber grew quiet. You claim to know the ritual of holdings. Dorax scoffed. Recite it. Then, Ta Wu felt panic rise within him. He had never heard of this ritual before. Just as he was about to admit his ignorance, he felt a gentle touch on his arm. Mina had stepped closer, and in her eyes he saw not mockery but encouragement. Drawing strength from her presence, Ta Wu began speaking in halting Andromedan, reciting words he didn't know he knew. Later, he would realize Mina had used the subtle telepathic ability of her species to share the knowledge with him, not forcing the words into his mind, but awakening memories of conversations with Kaelan he had forgotten. When he finished, even Dorax looked stunned. The human has demonstrated knowledge of our ways, stated the chief counselor. But concerns about security remain. Nari stepped forward. If I may, honored council. As primary bondmate to Kaelan, I have financial authority within our house. I have reviewed Ta Wu's management proposals. They are sound and maintain all security protocols. And I, added Mina, as cultural bondmate, have observed his respect for our traditions. He seeks to learn, not to change us. The council deliberated for hours. Finally, the chief counselor announced their decision. The inheritance stands with conditions. Ta Wu Park will maintain Kalen's assets for 1 standard year. If at that time, the trading house prospers and the bondmates are content, the inheritance becomes permanent. As they left the chamber, Dorax approached them. This isn't over, human. Our people are not meant to be ruled by yours. I don't seek to rule anyone, Ta Wu replied calmly. I only wish to honor Kalen's vision. Later, aboard the Star Whisper, Ta Wu found himself on the observation deck, staring at the glittering expanse of Andromedan space. You did well today, said Nari, joining him. Thanks to Mina's help, Ta Wu acknowledged. She didn't give you the words, Nari corrected. She merely helped you remember what Kalen had already taught you. That's why the council accepted it. The knowledge was truly yours. Ta Wu turned to her. Why did you defend me? You barely know me. Nari's expression softened slightly. Kalen chose you. We trusted him in life. We will honor him in death. As the ship prepared to depart, Ta Wu realized the challenge had only begun. He had a year to prove himself worthy of Kalen's trust, not just to the council, but to Nari and Mina as well. The trading offices of House Zenith buzzed with activity as Ta Wu entered, now 2 months into his role as inheritor. Andromedan staff paused briefly in their work, still not entirely used to a human in their midst. Some nodded respectfully, others quickly looked away. The Perlian contract requires your approval, said Nari, falling into step beside him. She handed him an electronic tablet with flowing Andromedan script. Their spice shipment arrived yesterday, but they claim the quality is lower than agreed. Ta Wu frowned at the tablet. Though he was learning Andromedan writing, the business terminology still confused him. What would you recommend? He asked. Accept the shipment but negotiate a 5% reduction in price, Nari replied promptly. The quality is acceptable, just not premium. We maintain the relationship while acknowledging their concerns. Ta Wu nodded and pressed his thumb to the tablet, leaving his authorization mark. Let's do that. Every day brought new challenges. The trading empire Kalen had built spanned 12 star systems and involved commerce with 15 different species. Ta Wu often felt overwhelmed, but Nari's financial expertise proved invaluable. She had been managing much of the business during Kalen's illness and knew every contract, every partner, and every market fluctuation. You're holding the stylus wrong again, Nari said later that day as they worked in Kalen's former office. Now Ta Wu's. She reached over, her cool blue fingers adjusting his grip on the Andromedan writing tool. Like this. The angle matters for formal signatures. Her touch was gentle but businesslike. After 2 months, she had become more comfortable around him, though still formal. Thank you, Ta Wu said, practicing the motion. I never realized how much I took Earth writing tools for granted. Cultural adaptation is rarely simple, came Mina's voice from the doorway. She carried a tray with steaming cups. I brought tea. You've been working for 6 hours without a break. Unlike Nari's practical approach to business, Mina specialized in cultural relations. She had been Kalen's cultural bondmate, responsible for maintaining the house's relationships with various societies. Her patience with Ta Wu's mistakes and questions seemed endless. The cluster lords have requested a meeting next week, Mina explained as she set down the tea. They wish to assess the new leader of House Zenith. Ta Wu felt a pang of anxiety. The cluster lords controlled access to crucial hyperspace routes. What should I expect? A test of character, Mina said simply. She demonstrated a complex greeting gesture. When you meet them, you must bow 3 times but never break eye contact. It shows both respect and strength. Over the next days, Minna guided Ta Wu through extensive preparations. They practiced Andromedan formal speaking patterns, appropriate dining etiquette, and even meditation techniques to control nervous energy. "Why are you helping me so much?" Ta Wu asked one evening as they finished a particularly grueling practice session. Minna's 4 eyes blinked in sequence, an expression Ta Wu had learned indicated thoughtfulness. "At first, it was duty to Kalen's memory," she admitted. "Now, I find your effort to understand us admirable." The meeting with the cluster lords proved challenging but successful. Ta Wu's careful preparation impressed the ancient Andromedans, who granted continued access to their trade routes. "You did well," Nari told him afterward. They'd rarely smile at newcomers. Slowly, Ta Wu began integrating his own knowledge into the business. His background in xenobiology proved unexpectedly useful when a shipment of medicinal plants from Earth was rejected by Andromedan buyers due to supposed contamination. "The color change isn't contamination," Ta Wu explained, examining the plants under a microscope in his makeshift lab aboard the Star Whisper. "It's a natural reaction to the different light spectrum here. The medicinal properties are actually enhanced." His discovery not only saved the shipment but created a new premium product line. Word spread through the trading community about the human who combined scientific understanding with business acumen. One evening, 3 months into his tenure, Ta Wu found himself sharing dinner with Nari and Minna in their private quarters. What had begun as formal business meetings had gradually evolved into a comfortable routine. "This food is delicious," Ta Wu said, enjoying a spicy Andromedan dish. "What do you call it?" "Kalara," Minna replied. It was Kalen's favorite. The spices come from his home region. "He would be pleased to see you enjoying it," Nari added, her usual reserve softening. He always said humans and Andromedans shared a love of flavor that other species lacked. The conversation flowed easily now, moving from business matters to cultural exchange. Ta Wu shared stories of Earth, while they taught him about Andromedan history and customs. "In our tradition," Minna explained, refilling Ta Wu's cup with a sweet Andromedan beverage, "a trading house is more than a business. It's a family unit, bound by more than profit." Kalen often spoke of how humans form families, Nari added. "He found your flexible arrangements fascinating. How you choose companions based on emotional connection rather than practical compatibility." Ta Wu smiled. "Yet here we are, from different worlds, forming some kind of team." "Indeed," Minna said, her expression warm. "An unconventional arrangement, but perhaps that's what Kalen intended." As weeks passed, their working relationship continued to evolve. Nari began seeking Ta Wu's input on financial decisions rather than simply advising him. Minna invited him to cultural events, gradually introducing him to Andromedan society, not as an outsider, but as a respected member of House Zenith. The business thrived under their combined leadership. Ta Wu's scientific innovations, Nari's financial acumen, and Minna's diplomatic skills complemented each other perfectly. New trading routes opened. Profits increased. Even some who had initially opposed Ta Wu's inheritance began to acknowledge the success. 6 months into the arrangement, Ta Wu received an unexpected visit from an Andromedan High Council representative. "The council is impressed by the performance of House Zenith," the representative stated formally. "We wish to extend preliminary approval of your inheritance claim." "Thank you," Ta Wu replied, "but the year isn't complete. We still have much to prove." After the representative left, Nari approached Ta Wu. "You could have accepted early approval. Why didn't you?" Ta Wu considered his answer carefully. "Because this isn't about me proving something to the council. It's about honoring what Kalen built. And that takes more than 6 months to understand fully." Nari studied him with all 4 eyes. "You're becoming more Andromedan in your thinking, and you're becoming more direct. Like a human," Ta Wu replied with a smile. That evening, for the first time, the 3 shared stories of Kalen, not as business discussions, but as people remembering someone they had all loved in different ways. Laughter mingled with moments of silence as they recalled his wisdom, his humor, and his vision for bridging worlds. What had begun as an awkward inheritance was becoming something none of them had expected. A genuine partnership that transcended both business and cultural boundaries. Wu rubbed his tired eyes as he studied the financial records displayed on the holographic screen. After 8 months as head of House Zenith, he had finally gained enough understanding of Andromedan accounting to review the historical transactions himself. Something didn't look right. "Nari, could you look at this?" he called. Nari entered his office, her movements graceful despite her tall frame. Over the months, her initially cool demeanor had warmed considerably toward the human. "What have you found?" she asked, leaning over his shoulder. "These transactions from the month before Kalon fell ill." Wu pointed to a series of numbers. "They don't match the trade patterns. Large sums transferred to an account I don't recognize." Nari's 4 eyes narrowed as she studied the screen. "You're right. That's not a normal trading partner." Her fingers moved swiftly across the interface, tracing the money flow. "This account belongs to a research facility on the outer colonies. Why would Kalon send funds there?" "What kind of research facility?" Wu asked, feeling a strange unease. Nari's voice dropped to a whisper. "Bioresearch, specializing in crystalline compounds." Their eyes met in sudden understanding. Crystal lung syndrome, the disease that had killed Kalon, involved crystalline formations in Andromedan respiratory tissue. "It could be coincidence," Wu said, but his scientific mind was already making connections. "Perhaps," Nari replied. But Kalon never believed in coincidences. That evening, they shared their discovery with Minna in the privacy of their shared quarters. The three had grown comfortable together, often spending evenings discussing business before transitioning to more personal conversations. "If what you suspect is true," Minna said, her voice tight with controlled emotion, "then Kalon's death was no natural illness." "We need more evidence," Wu cautioned. "This is a serious accusation." "I can help," Minna said. "As cultural bondmate, I maintained Kalon's political connections. Some of them might have information about this research facility." Over the next weeks, they conducted their investigation with careful discretion. Nari traced financial connections, discovering that the same research facility had received funding from several conservative Andromedan merchant houses, all opposed to increased human-Andromedan cooperation. Minna activated her network of diplomatic contacts, gathering whispers and rumors. There was a secret meeting, she reported one night, between Dorax and representatives from 4 major houses, just 2 weeks before Kalon fell ill. Wu contributed his scientific knowledge, reviewing medical reports on Kalon's illness. "The progression was unusually rapid," he noted. "And look at this, his medical scans show crystal formations with remarkably uniform structure. Natural disease produces random patterns." One quiet evening, as Wu worked late in his office, he discovered an encrypted file in Kalon's personal records. Despite his best efforts, he couldn't break the security. "Nari, Minna," he called through the ship's communication system. "I need your help." They arrived quickly, both now accustomed to Wu's late-night discoveries. "It requires a bondmate identification," Nari observed, examining the encryption. "Both of us, simultaneously." Nari and Minna placed their hands on the scanner together. The file unlocked, revealing a video recording of Kalon himself, made just days before he first showed symptoms. Kalon's familiar face appeared, his blue skin still healthy, all 4 eyes clear and alert. "If you are watching this," he began, "then my suspicions were correct. And I am no longer alive." Wu felt a chill run through him. Beside him, Nari and Minna stood perfectly still. "I have discovered a plot among the conservative faction," Kalon continued. "They fear the growing alliance between humans and Andromedans. My trading routes have become too successful, my advocacy for cooperation too influential." Kalon explained how he had uncovered evidence of a bioweapon designed to mimic crystal lung syndrome, untraceable and seemingly natural. He had learned of their plan to eliminate him but couldn't prove it in time. "I have made arrangements," Kalen said, his voice steady despite the grim content. "By naming Ta Wu as my heir, I create a situation they cannot easily undo. The law protects inheritance claims, even unusual ones." Kalan's image looked directly at the camera, as if seeing them across time. "Nari, Mina, I trust you will help Ta Wu understand our ways. And Ta Wu, my friend, I trust you will protect what I have built, and more importantly, protect my bondmates." The recording ended. The room fell silent. "He knew," Mina whispered. "He knew they would kill him. And he used his death to strengthen what he believed in," Nari added, her voice thick with emotion. "By making the human his heir, he forced our peoples closer together." Ta Wu felt the weight of Kalen's trust anew. The inheritance wasn't just about wealth or even about us. It was a political move against those who fear cooperation between our species. The three looked at each other, their shared grief creating a new bond between them. "What do we do now?" Mina asked. "We gather evidence," Ta Wu said firmly. "Proper evidence that will stand in your courts. Then we expose them." Their investigation intensified. Nari used her financial expertise to follow money trails disguised as legitimate business. Mina leveraged her diplomatic connections to gather testimonies from those on the periphery of the conspiracy. Ta Wu applied his scientific knowledge to analyze the bioweapon's likely development process. One night, Dorax's personal assistant contacted them secretly, offering information in exchange for protection. The assistant had overheard conversations confirming their suspicions. Dorax and his allies had indeed commissioned the bioweapon that killed Kalen. "Why help us now?" Ta Wu asked during their clandestine meeting. "They're planning more assassinations," the assistant explained nervously. "Anyone promoting human Andromedan cooperation is at risk, including you three." The threat brought the trio closer. What had begun as an awkward inherited relationship had become a true partnership, now united against a common enemy. "We need to be careful," Nari warned as they compiled their evidence. "Dorax has connections throughout the council. We don't take this to the council first," Ta Wu said. "We need public support. Mina, can your diplomatic channels arrange a public forum?" Mina nodded. "The annual trade summit is in 2 weeks. All major houses will attend, along with representatives from allied species, including humans." "Perfect," Ta Wu said. "We'll present our evidence there." Too many witnesses for them to silence. As the summit approached, their preparations grew more intense. Security was doubled aboard the Star Whisper. Ta Wu rarely slept, working to ensure their evidence was irrefutable. One evening, he found Nari and Mina waiting in his quarters. "You need rest," Nari said firmly. "You're no use to anyone exhausted." "We'll watch over the evidence," Mina added. "Trust us as we trust you." Ta Wu looked at them. These Andromedan women who had gone from strangers to partners to something he couldn't quite define, but something precious. "I do trust you," he said simply, "more than anyone else in this galaxy." The great hall of the Andromedan Trade Summit fell silent as Ta Wu stepped onto the speaking platform. Hundreds of delegates from across the galaxy watched, some curious, some hostile, some hopeful. Behind him stood Nari and Mina, their presence giving him strength. "Honored representatives," Ta Wu began, his voice steady despite his racing heart. "I stand before you not just as the inheritor of House Zenith, but as someone seeking justice for Kalen Vos." The evidence they had gathered over the past months appeared on the massive display screens around the hall. Financial records, scientific analyses, and sworn testimonies painted a clear picture of conspiracy and murder. Kalen Vos did not die of natural causes. Ta Wu continued. He was assassinated by those who feared his vision of cooperation between our peoples. Shocked murmurs spread through the crowd. In the front row, Dorax's face darkened with rage. "This is absurd," Dorax shouted, rising to his feet. The human fabricates these claims to strengthen his illegal hold on Andromedan assets. Nari stepped forward, her tall figure commanding attention. The evidence speaks for itself. As primary financial bondmate to Kalon, I verify the authenticity of these records. Mina joined her, and as cultural bondmate, I confirm the testimonies of those who witnessed your secret meetings. The trade summit erupted into chaos. Security officers moved to surround Dorax as the High Council members present reviewed the evidence on their private screens. "Order," called the Chief Counselor, her voice cutting through the noise. "This matter requires immediate attention. The Council will convene an emergency session. Dorax and his associates will remain in protective custody until this investigation concludes." As guards led away a protesting Dorax, Tawu felt a strange mix of satisfaction and sadness. Justice for Kalon was within reach, but it couldn't bring back his friend. In the days that followed, the Andromedan justice system moved with surprising speed. The evidence was overwhelming. Dorax and 6 other merchant lords were found guilty of conspiracy and murder. Their trading rights were revoked, their assets frozen. 1 week after the summit, the High Council summoned Tawu, Nari, and Mina to a private chamber on Andromeda Prime. "The Council recognizes the service you have rendered to our people," the Chief Counselor stated formally. "Justice has been served, and dangerous elements removed from our trading community." The 7 council members bowed their heads in respect, a gesture rarely offered to outsiders. "Furthermore," continued the Chief Counselor, "the probationary period for Tawu Park's inheritance is hereby waived. The Council confirms his permanent status as head of House Zenith, with all rights and responsibilities thereof." Tawu bowed in the Andromedan way. "I am honored by your trust." Later, as they returned to the Star Whisper, Tawu felt a strange emptiness despite their victory. "What's troubling you?" Mina asked, her perceptive eyes catching his mood. "We achieved what Kalon wanted. Justice and continued cooperation between our peoples," Tawu said slowly. "But now what? What is my purpose here?" Nari and Mina exchanged glances, a silent communication he had come to recognize over their months together. "Perhaps it's time to discuss what comes next," Nari suggested, "for all of us." That evening, they gathered in the ship's garden, the space that had become their favorite meeting place. Among the plants from dozens of worlds, including the lavender from Earth that Kalon had loved, they spoke openly about the future. "The traditional period of mourning for Kalon ends next week," Mina explained. "Nari and I must decide our path forward." "I understand," Tawu said, though his heart tightened at the thought of losing them. "You're free to establish new bonds or return to your birth houses." "That is one option," Nari acknowledged. "But there is another possibility." Tawu waited, unsure where the conversation was heading. "In Andromedan tradition," Mina explained gently, "when bondmates lose their primary partner, they sometimes form a new arrangement with someone they have come to trust and respect." Tawu's breath caught. "Someone like me. But I'm human. Surely your traditions don't allow for that." "Our traditions value understanding above all else," Nari said. "Over these months, you have shown a deeper understanding of our ways than many Andromedans. You have honored Kalon's memory not just with words but with actions. We have grown fond of you," Mina added, using the Andromedan term that meant something between respect and affection. "The 3 of us work well together. We balance each other." "Are you suggesting?" Tawu began, hardly daring to believe what he was hearing. "A new kind of bond," Nari confirmed. "Not identical to what we had with Kalon, but something equally meaningful. A partnership that bridges our worlds, just as Kalon envisioned." "There is no precedent for this," Mina acknowledged. "But perhaps that is fitting. Kalon always believed in creating new paths." Tawu looked at these 2 remarkable beings, Nari with her brilliant mind and growing warmth, Mina with her cultural wisdom and gentle strength. They had moved from strangers to colleagues to friends, and now they offered something more. "I would be honored," he said simply, But how would such a bond be recognized? On the anniversary of Kalen's death, a unique ceremony took place aboard the Star Whisper. Representatives from both Andromedan and human communities gathered to witness something never seen before, a bonding ceremony that honored both cultures. Ta-Wu, dressed in traditional Andromedan formal attire, but with Earth symbols woven into the fabric, stood between Nari and Mina before an Andromedan bonding altar. The altar held items from both worlds, crystalline, Andromedan bonding stones, and fragrant earth lavender. A high priestess who conducted the ceremony spoke in both languages. Today we witness not just the bonding of individuals, but the bridging of worlds. As Kalen Vos foresaw, understanding creates connections stronger than differences. The three exchanged vows. Traditional Andromedan promises of support and respect, combined with human concepts of care and commitment. Their hands joined in the center of the altar, human skin against blue Andromedan flesh, different yet perfectly compatible. By the laws of both our peoples, I recognize this bond, declared the priestess. May it flourish as a symbol of what our species can accomplish together. After the ceremony, as guests celebrated around them, the three stood quietly by the ship's observation window, watching the stars. Do you think Kalen knew this would happen? Ta-Wu asked softly. Perhaps not exactly this, Mina replied, her hand gently touching his. But he knew that bringing different perspectives together creates something new and valuable. He was always 3 steps ahead in business, Nari added, her tone warm with memory and present happiness. Why not in personal matters as well? 2 weeks later, they announced the creation of the Kalon Foundation, an organization dedicated to fostering cooperation between humans and Andromedans through cultural and scientific exchange. Funded by House Zenith's considerable resources, the foundation quickly became a beacon for those who shared Kalen's vision of galactic harmony. As the Star Whisper set course for Earth, Ta-Wu's first visit home since inheriting his position, the three stood together on the bridge, a new kind of family gazing toward a shared future. To Kalen, Ta-Wu said quietly, raising a glass of Andromedan wine. To Kalen, Nari and Mina echoed. And somewhere in the vast cosmos, they felt their friend smiling at what his final, unexpected gift had created.